Did you know that over half of Texas cities now make it illegal to build affordable apartments in most neighborhoods? Not because of safety concerns, but because of invisible lines on a map called zoning laws. These aren't just boring bureaucratic rules, they're silently shaping who gets to live where and who gets pushed out entirely. Across the state, people are being priced out of their own communities. Families who've lived in neighborhoods for generations are watching rents skyrocket, while new housing projects get blocked before they even break ground. And the worst part? Most Texans have no idea what's really causing it. In this video, we're exposing the 10 hidden zoning rules that could be quietly wiping out affordable housing all across Texas. Some of them sound harmless, even helpful, but what they're really doing might shock you. So stick around, because once you see how deep this goes, you'll never look at your neighborhood the same way again. Number 1. Banning multifamily housing. Across Texas, one of the biggest barriers to affordable housing is hiding in plain sight local bans on multifamily housing. In cities like Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio, huge portions of residential land, sometimes over 70%, are zoned exclusively for single-family homes. That means apartments, duplexes, triplexes, or even townhomes simply aren't allowed in most neighborhoods. These bans aren't new, but they've become even more restrictive over time, often reinforced by residents who oppose any type of denser development near their homes. The result? A massive shortage of housing options for working families, students, and low-income residents. You might be thinking, what's so bad about single-family neighborhoods? But here's the thing, by locking in this one type of housing, cities are suffocating supply. Without the ability to build multifamily units, developers can't respond to rising demand. And when supply can't keep up, prices explode. A recent report by the Urban Institute found that banning multifamily homes directly contributes to rising rents, housing instability, and economic segregation. In simple terms, people who can't afford a big house get pushed farther out or forced into overcrowded or substandard housing. And this isn't just a policy issue, it's personal. Think of the teachers, nurses, grocery clerks, and delivery drivers who keep our cities running. Many of them can't afford to live anywhere near where they work, simply because zoning won't allow smaller, more affordable homes nearby. This kind of exclusionary zoning doesn't just make life harder, it quietly reshapes communities, deciding who belongs and who doesn't. It's not a bulldozer tearing down a neighborhood, it's a pen drawing invisible walls around it. Number 2. Minimum lot sizes. Imagine trying to build an affordable home, only to be told the land it sits on has to be at least half an acre, even if the house itself is small. That's exactly what minimum lot size laws do, and they're surprisingly common across Texas. In many suburbs and rural counties, zoning codes require homes to be built on very large plots of land, which means fewer homes can be built in the same area. Sounds like a way to keep things spacious, right? But in reality, it's a hidden way to keep out lower-income families who can't afford big lots and big homes. These rules make housing more expensive before a single brick is laid. Land is one of the most expensive parts of home construction, and when cities require large lots, developers have no choice but to build larger, pricier homes just to break even. That means smaller, more affordable starter homes or duplexes are simply off the table. A study from Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies found that minimum lot sizes are one of the most underestimated causes of rising home prices. They look harmless on paper, but they price out thousands of families in real life. The impact is not just financial, it's also social and environmental. Large lots lead to urban sprawl, longer commutes, and segregated communities, where only the wealthiest can afford to live in well-resourced neighborhoods. It also discourages walkable communities and public transit, which hurts people without access to cars. The irony? Minimum lot size laws were originally meant to preserve community character. But today, they often serve as legal barriers to inclusive, affordable, and sustainable neighborhoods. And unless they're reformed, they'll keep pushing affordable housing further and further out of reach. Number 3. Height restrictions. Now here's a rule that sounds simple, but has massive consequences. In many Texas cities, especially in older neighborhoods and suburban areas, zoning laws limit how tall buildings can be. In some cases, developers can't build higher than 2 or 3 stories, even in places that are perfect for mid-rise apartments or condos. While the idea is to protect the skyline or keep neighborhoods from changing too fast, the truth is that these height restrictions choke housing supply in exactly the areas where it's needed most, near jobs, schools, and public transit. When cities limit building height, they also limit how many people can live in a given area. It's simple math. If you can only build 3 stories, that's maybe 6 to 12 units. But go up to 5 or 6 stories, you could house twice as many families on the same land. That's not just a density boost, it's an affordability multiplier. According to the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, cities that allow taller buildings near transit hubs and employment centers see lower rent increases over time because more housing gets built where demand is highest. But in Texas, outdated height caps are often defended with emotional arguments like, "It'll ruin our views," or "We don't want it to feel like a big city." These sentiments can block smart, affordable development. In Austin, for example, proposed height increases along major corridors were met with fierce pushback, even though those areas were ideal for mixed-income housing. The result? Missed opportunities, longer commutes, and more pressure on already overcrowded housing market. If we want more affordable housing, we can't keep forcing everything to stay small, especially when we've got room to build up, not just out. Number 4, parking minimums. Here's a zoning rule that most people don't even realize exists, but it affects almost every building in Texas: parking minimums. These are local laws that require developers to build a set number of parking spaces per housing unit, even if the people living there don't need them. For example, in many cities, an apartment complex must provide 2 parking spots per unit, regardless of whether the tenants own cars. That might sound convenient, but in reality, these rules drive up construction costs, reduce the number of homes that can be built, and make housing much less affordable. Why? Because parking is expensive, especially in urban areas. Where space is tight, each underground parking space can cost between $20,000 and $50,000 to build. That cost doesn't vanish, it gets passed on to renters and homebuyers. And it gets worse. When a developer is forced to dedicate a large chunk of land to parking instead of housing, fewer units can be built. That means less housing overall, and the units that do get built must be sold or rented at higher prices just to cover costs. According to a Brookings report, parking mandates act as a kind of hidden housing tax, especially harmful in walkable, transit-friendly areas. Ironically, these rules remain in place even in neighborhoods where fewer people drive, like near college campuses, downtowns, or transit corridors. And while some Texas cities have started to reform these policies, most still require far more parking than residents actually use. What's worse, the people most impacted, low-income renters who rely on public transit, end up paying for parking they don't need. If cities truly want to encourage affordable housing, they'll have to realize, not every home needs 2 cars parked out front. Sometimes, it just needs to be affordable. Number 5, design review board. On paper, design review boards sound like a good idea. Their job is to make sure new buildings fit the character of a neighborhood. But in practice, these boards often become gatekeepers that slow down, shrink, or outright block affordable housing projects, all in the name of aesthetics. Whether it's an apartment building being called too modern or a duplex being labeled out of character, these vague criteria give review boards an enormous amount of subjective power over what gets built. And that power is often used to keep neighborhoods looking exactly the same, which means keeping out change. The problem is that design standards are rarely objective. They're often influenced by public pressure, neighborhood politics, and frankly, not wanting lower-income people nearby. A developer might meet every zoning requirement, height, lot size, parking, and more, but still get denied because their project doesn't blend in. In many Texas cities, these review processes can drag on for months, costing developers thousands and leading many to give up entirely. And when affordable housing developers walk away, it's not just a project that dies. It's housing for real people that disappears. What makes it worse is that these decisions often happen behind closed doors, with little oversight. The boards aren't elected, and their decisions are rarely challenged. Meanwhile, the shortage of affordable housing keeps growing. Experts like those at the Turner Center for Housing Innovation have called design review boards one of the most overlooked barriers to housing equity. Because while it's important to have well-designed communities, those standards shouldn't be used as a weapon to exclude. If we want more homes people can actually afford, we'll need to ask, are we protecting neighborhood character or just protecting exclusion? If this video opened your eyes, don't just scroll away. Hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it means the world to us and fuels the next story we tell. Speech balloon, drop a comment below. Which zoning rule shocked you the most? Let's talk about it. Number 6. Historic preservation overreach. Preserving history is important. No one wants to see meaningful architecture or cultural landmarks erased in the name of modern development. But in cities across Texas, historic preservation laws are being misused, not to protect real history, but to block affordable housing and freeze neighborhoods in time. Entire areas are being labeled as historic districts, sometimes with questionable justification. Once that label is applied, building anything new, especially multifamily or lower-cost housing, becomes incredibly difficult, if not impossible. This kind of overreach is becoming more common in higher-income neighborhoods where residents push for historic designation not to save buildings, but to stop change. A modest house from the 1950s might suddenly be declared a historic treasure, not because of its architecture, but because preserving it ensures that new development can't move in. And under these rules, even basic renovations can require approval, while demolitions or new builds are often outright denied. A study published in the Harvard Law Review referred to this as preservation as exclusion, a quiet but powerful tactic to keep affordable housing out of desirable neighborhoods. The consequences are serious. By locking up large portions of land under preservation rules, cities lose opportunities to build denser, more inclusive communities. Projects that could bring in affordable apartments, senior housing, or workforce housing get shelved indefinitely. And while wealthy homeowners may feel their property values are being protected, the city as a whole suffers from increased housing shortages, higher prices, and growing inequality. Historic preservation should be about honoring the past, not blocking the future. And unless this process becomes more balanced and transparent, it will continue to serve as yet another hidden wall keeping Texans out of neighborhoods they could otherwise call home. Number 7. Zoning tied to school districts. In Texas, where you live doesn't just determine your address, it often determines where your kids go to school, and that creates one of the most quietly exclusionary zoning practices in the state. Many cities and suburbs have zoning maps that line up perfectly with school district boundaries. And in areas with top-rated public schools, you'll almost always find strict zoning rules that ban affordable or multifamily housing. It's no accident. These policies are designed, intentionally or not, to keep low-income families out of high-performing school zones by limiting what kind of housing can be built there. The logic is cruel but simple. If you only allow large, expensive, single-family homes in a school district, only families who can afford that kind of housing will get access to those schools. Everyone else? They're pushed into lower-income neighborhoods with underfunded, lower-performing schools, creating a cycle that reinforces educational and economic inequality. A Stanford University study found that zoning linked to school boundaries is one of the leading drivers of school segregation, and it's still happening today, even in progressive cities that claim to value equity. This system doesn't just affect students, it impacts entire communities. Parents are forced to make impossible choices, pay more than they can afford to live near a good school, or settle for less and risk their child's future. Teachers, bus drivers, and even police officers often can't afford to live in the very communities they serve, simply because zoning won't allow housing they can afford. If we want to build stronger, fairer cities, we have to stop using school district lines as a barrier to access. Housing shouldn't be a gatekeeper to education, but right now, in much of Texas, it still is. Number 8. No density bonuses for affordable units. In many parts of Texas, cities say they want more affordable housing, but when it comes to giving developers the tools to actually build it, they fall short. One of the most effective tools available is something called a density bonus. It's simple. If a developer agrees to include affordable units in their project, the city lets them build more units overall, maybe an extra floor, or a few more apartments on the same lot. But in many Texas cities, these kinds of bonuses are either too limited, too complicated, or don't exist at all. Without these incentives, developers face a harsh financial reality. Building affordable housing often means lower profit margins, more regulation, and greater risk. Without the ability to offset those challenges, like by adding more market rate units through a density bonus, many developers simply walk away from affordable projects altogether. Cities like Houston, which offer more flexible density bonuses, have seen increased interest in mixed-income developments. But in places where these programs are weak or missing, the result is fewer affordable units, and more luxury-only construction that pushes prices even higher. The frustrating part? This is one of the few zoning tools that can create win-win solution. Developers get to build more. Cities get more affordable housing. Communities become more diverse and inclusive. Yet, in too many places, outdated zoning laws or political resistance block these programs from taking off. It's a missed opportunity with real consequences. When cities refuse to reward affordability, they send a clear message: profit over people. But if Texas wants to tackle its housing crisis, it needs to start saying yes, not just to density, but to smart, incentivized growth that actually benefits everyone. Number 9. Red tape and permitting delays. Even when developers are willing to build affordable housing, one of the biggest roadblocks they face isn't community opposition or lack of land, it's bureaucratic red tape. In many Texas cities, the permitting process for new housing projects can be slow, confusing, and painfully expensive. What should take a few weeks often takes months or even years, with endless reviews, public hearings, paperwork, and back-and-forth approvals. And guess what? Affordable housing projects are hit hardest because they often rely on tighter budgets and public funding that can't survive long delays. Every extra month a project is stalled adds costs in materials, in labor, in interest on loans. A study by the National Association of Home Builders found that delays in permitting and approvals can raise the total cost of a housing project by 20 to 30%. That's enough to turn a feasible, affordable apartment complex into a project that no longer makes financial sense. For nonprofit housing developers, that kind of uncertainty can be a deal breaker. It's why many projects are canceled before they ever break ground, not because they're bad ideas, but because the process is too slow to support them. What's worse is that these delays don't affect luxury developments in the same way. Big money projects can afford to wait. They have teams of lawyers, consultants, and lobbyists to push things through. But smaller, community-based, or affordable housing developers don't have those resources. If Texas wants to solve its housing crisis, it needs to streamline the permitting process, especially for projects that serve lower-income residents. Faster approvals mean more housing sooner and at a lower cost. In a market where every month counts, cutting through the red tape could be one of the most powerful solutions we have. Number 10. No statewide zoning reform. Perhaps the most frustrating part of Texas' housing crisis isn't what cities are doing, it's what the state isn't doing. Unlike some states that have stepped in to overhaul outdated, exclusionary zoning laws, Texas has left land use decisions almost entirely in the hands of local governments. While that might sound like local control, in reality it's led to a patchwork of rules, many of which block affordable housing through zoning laws we've discussed, from bans on multifamily housing to parking minimums. Without statewide reform, there's no safety net, no standard, and no pressure on cities to actually fix the problem. In 2023, a series of bills aimed at modernizing Texas zoning laws were introduced, including proposals to legalize duplexes, allow more accessory dwelling units, and streamline approvals for affordable housing. But under pressure from powerful real estate interests and suburban political groups, nearly all of them failed. So, while the state faces skyrocketing rents, rising homelessness, and shrinking home ownership, lawmakers chose to protect the status quo. And that status quo is a system that makes it easy to say no to new housing, and almost impossible to say yes to affordability. This lack of leadership leaves cities to fight their housing battles alone, with limited resources, local politics, and intense neighborhood resistance standing in the way. And the consequences, they ripple across the state. When one city refuses to build affordable housing, the pressure shifts to the next one, creating a domino effect of rising prices and displacement. Until Texas enacts smart, statewide zoning reforms, real solutions will remain out of reach. Because if every city is allowed to say, "Not in my backyard," then affordable housing won't have a backyard left to build in at all. So now you've seen it, 10 zoning rules that may seem technical or harmless at first glance, but are quietly shaping the future of housing in Texas. These aren't just policy quirks. They're powerful tools that determine who gets to live where, what gets built, and whether communities stay inclusive or become exclusive. From height limits to parking mandates, and from red tape to the absence of statewide reform, these rules are pushing affordable housing further out of reach, especially for working families, young people, and seniors. And here's the truth. If we do nothing, it only gets worse. Rents will keep rising. More families will be priced out, and Texas will continue down a path where only the wealthy can afford to live near opportunity. while everyone else is pushed to the edges. But it doesn't have to be this way. Cities and the state can make different choices. They can reform outdated zoning laws, streamline development for affordable housing, and build communities where everyone has a fair shot at finding a home. Whether you're a renter, a homeowner, a policymaker, or just someone who cares about the future of your city, these issues affect you. Zoning isn't just about buildings. It's about people. It's about the kind of Texas we want to live in. One that grows together or one that grows apart.